Hello everyone. Welcome to this kind of review of the very busy week 2. We've covered a lot of material this week, and there's been a lot again of very good comments in each of the steps. So a lot of discussion about power, about relationships and their role in contracts. And I'd like to pick up some aspects of the relationship stuff, and particularly the portfolio argument, the portfolio of relationships, and the link to the poll. I'm going to talk about the poll in just a few minutes. The stakeholder exercise seemed to have got a lot of people excited, and they seem to enjoy that. Lots of good interaction. The whole point about stakeholders, of course, is that if we do the thinking up front about who these stakeholders are, how we want to communicate with those that we want to communicate with, and try and limit the information that goes to some of the other stakeholders, for example, any competitors that we might have. So it's worthwhile recognizing all of the players, all of their agendas, and planning how we need to interact or not with each of those. Another thing that seemed to have struck a chord, seemed to mean quite a lot to a lot of people, was this idea of negotiation, but from a view of what's in it for we, rather than what's in it for me. So clearly the win-win opportunity is an important one. There are also arguments, and this is part of the portfolio story as well, where the effort involved in getting to that kind of solution might be too great. But there should still be possibilities of getting some degree of win-win. Without it, people will simply walk away and there will be no agreement. So all of this is very important. I'd like to pick up some of the poll. First of all, we've had so far 492 respondents, which is really good. The reason for the poll was really to address this issue of, do we really understand who we are sourcing from, who our suppliers are, and how important they are? So the first couple of questions were about whether organisations do a spend analysis to find out where they're spending their money, and whether they divide up the suppliers based on that. The people who answered, 37% said no to the first of those questions about spend analysis, and 26% said that they didn't divide up the suppliers. I think the point here is that you might be missing an opportunity. We cannot manage every single relationship in the same way as the important few. So some analysis up front. But given the proportions, the majority of people who said yes to these questions, there's a lot of good practice represented in this community on this programme. Quite an interesting result, and by the way, we'll try and get these aggregated results mounted on the step later on. But an interesting result in the number of suppliers who are represented in the most important 80% of the spend. 9% of the respondents said only one. Now, this is quite an interesting situation, because that's a little bit scary for me. If you're spending so much money with only one supplier, and we've also talked about risk this week, so for me that's quite risky. It might be worth thinking about whether there's opportunities to spread that spend around a little bit more. It raises the issue about single suppliers, because we also need to recognise that there are different reasons for single suppliers. Sometimes we draw a distinction between a sole source, which is effectively you have no choice. There is a monopoly supplier, you have to deal with them. And you're then essentially in their power. A single source is the term used when you have a choice and you've chosen only one. Now, there are some good reasons to have only one. You can get close to them, you can understand them, you understand what their quality performance is and their responsiveness. You can invest in that relationship. But the risk element is still there. So often it's worth having a second source, not just one. And of course, our worry is that if you have far too many suppliers all competing for one single contract or one category of spend, then you can't manage all of that complexity. So this is why the poll is trying to draw this information out of your organization's experience. Quite a lot of response, 42% and 22%, were in the range 2 to 10 key suppliers and 11 to 20 key suppliers. This is good. This allows you to focus on the important few. And the rest of the respondents were quite large numbers, 25 to 50 and then 51 to 100. So again, the issue is how much effort, how much concentration can you devote to that kind of spread? Of course, it depends on the scale of the business and what part of the business people are responding to in the questionnaire. But essentially, the argument is, who do you need to get close to, customers and suppliers, and how much effort can you devote to making those relationships and those contracts work really well? We also asked the question about levels of importance for different suppliers, and 22% said they didn't do this kind of differentiation. So again, the subsequent question, which we didn't ask, but it's worth thinking about now, is why not? If you believe in the discussion about portfolios, then this is an obvious thing to do, but 78% were doing it. Quite a spread of the spend from the high value suppliers. 29% were in the 40 to 50% of the total spend was with the higher value. And at the other end of this particular scale, 15% had more than 80% of their spend with the high value. So again, if the resources are allocated appropriately, that might be okay. So there was some free questions, some open text questions at the end, really saying, if you've got special suppliers, what makes them special? What do they get treated differently in different ways? Whole variety of reasons that we can't actually aggregate at all in this area. Sometimes it's just the sheer size issue. Sometimes it's the political importance of a particular supplier. Sometimes it's a requirement of some kind that only this kind of supplier is certified to do certain things. So there's a lot of different reasons, and price doesn't appear in it too often. Quality and response often does. But generally people were saying they're special because we work more closely with them and we support each other. And essentially that's the argument of our course here. So thank you very much for the poll. As I said earlier, we'll try and get some of the aggregated results up ready for you to look at and see if I've made any sense of them. You can check on me later on, hopefully. The other thing we did this week was the video discussion, and we deliberately chose to set this up with early career people, partly because in many organisations the whole area of procurement and more recently contract management is almost emerging. It's not been regarded as high visibility or high importance, and that's why this MOOC was initiated, to try and change that perception. So there was this feeling that historically people often ended up in procurement, sometimes in contract management, having tried some other things and maybe not being so successful. So we set up this discussion forum just to see how the new entrants into the activity were thinking. And this was really interesting. I really enjoyed it. because we got all aspects represented. We had people from what we call the buy side, looking at supply contracts, but also the sell side, looking at important customers. Young career people, but with significant responsibilities already. We also had, from Gonzalo, a very personal view about contract management, because the contracts he was managing had to do with him and his career. So that was another aspect on it, as well as someone entering into, or soon to enter into, the legal profession, so still going through an undergraduate program, and her response to the opportunities. So if you haven't watched it so far, I would encourage you to do so. It's really interesting. Quite a lot of focus on the public sector, but a couple of points come out from some of the questions, that there is good practice in the private sector as well as bad practice, of course. So there are opportunities on both sides. I think the public sector in the UK is just recognising these issues in a big way and putting a lot of support and resource behind it. So we needed to represent that. Also, there were some questions about transfer into this activity from other areas. And in a sense, what I said historically was that people did that by default. But perhaps now the opportunity is to see the new challenges and how skills can transfer from other parts of the business activity. And in fact, many of the skills discussions are about just having experience, commercial awareness, and bringing that to bear into the contract management and the commercial arena. So, as I say, if you haven't caught up with the video discussion, please try and do that now. I think you'll enjoy it. And of course, next week we've got some interesting discussions, as well as another video discussion about the future of this area in the light of developments in technology. So I hope you'll enjoy that as well. So please continue to be active, to learn from each other as you've already been doing, and sharing your experiences and opinions. Really interesting discussions, and we try and respond where we think we can add some value. So a busy week, an interesting third week to come. So please continue to take part and enjoy. Thank you very much.